Hi, I'm leaving.
Chris, you're live now.
Oh, we're live on Facebook, everyone. This is Johnny. This is Miguel. That's Thad. I'm your host, Cristian Portilla. We're about to go live. Tune into joltradio.org or listen to our show via the Jolt Radio app, and it'll be posted after on roamfreerights.com. And yeah, we'll be getting started real shortly. And so, it should come up on your feed, the show. Like, it'll lag for a little bit. It'll pop up soon, though.
All right.
And then you can just share it in your...
Can I go to your profile?
Yes, you find it on my profile, yes.
Maybe I can,
Oh, this is cool.
You see it? Inception style. Yeah.
So do I just tap it? I want to see myself. Do I tap it?
You tap it and you click share. Share now. Or something.
Oh, there it is.
Share as a
hello.
post or share. There you go.
Yeah, share to group or just share?
Share.
Share.
Let me know if you figured it out. Okay, cool.
I think I did it.
That's cool.
You got it, boo?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody's good? Alright, awesome. We'll be starting now. Okay. Yeah? Alright, cool. My hands get cold.
Mine are colder.
Yeah.
We had some heartfelt. Is the ice cream man here? We had some heartfelt words before we started, like moments before.
Alright, you guys are going to lose audio, and he'll be back in just a bit.
Okay.
Alright, Christian, hold on. Let's make sure here.
Did you share it, baby? You want me to
See?
Oh yeah, you did. You shared it.
Alright, cool. We're good. That was TT, y'all.
Alright, give me 1 second.
I love the Duff beers and
Oh,
Alright, Chris, I'm going to start you guys off.
alright.
3, 2,
Thank you.
and 1.
There's things going on all the time. And now we have greater access to seeing them happen in front of us. It gets confusing and sometimes painful. But in the end, love sets it all free. Plus love. It's the only answer. From the soul, y'all.
Chris, I'm going to bring you in.
Peace world. Welcome to Meet Them Mondays on Jolt Radio. I'm your host, Cristian Portilla, and I'm in the studio with Johnny Tsokos, Thaddeus Shorter, and Miguel Pichardo for today's show titled Shut Up and Be a Man. Welcome, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all for
What's
being
up?
here. How was everyone's weekend?
Really good.
Wild.
Yeah, family time. So this weekend yesterday was Earth Day, and then Friday was 420. So Mother Nature was raging this weekend. One time for Mother Nature.
She went
Saturday was Record Store Day.
Saturday was Record Store Day
busy.
for the culture.
Yeah.
Johnny for the culture. And please introduce yourselves to our listeners. Johnny, you can go first.
I'm Johnny Tsokos, born and raised in Queens, New York. Writer, artist, father. Currently one of the owners of Cream Parlor here in Miami. Ice Cream Noir, what? Represent?
The ice cream man.
Yeah. Much love, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you
It's
for
exciting.
being here. Daddy, introduce
Hey.
yourself.
I'm Thaddeus Shorter, the man of many names. Some of you know me as Wolfman Style. Some of you know me as
Daddy Zaddy.
Zaddy Daddy. Born and raised in the city formerly known as Carroll City, and a professional wrestler / lover / rapper / everything.
And Miguel?
Miguel Pichardo. I'm like Johnny, a Queens native, but I was born in Queens, but I was raised here in Miami. Currently working with South Florida Cares. That's a nonprofit, national nonprofit, the local affiliate here. We go into different opportunity and alternative schools throughout Dade to teach youth different things like social emotional awareness, coping skills, job training, things like that. And the majority of the students I work with are young males, typically high school age.
Okay, awesome. Thank you all for being here. And so, alright, I was inspired, as you all know, to bring up this topic because there was an article that I found on NPR titled "Guys, We Have a Problem: How American Masculinity Creates Lonely Men." And the journalist basically was reporting that different studies suggest that middle-aged men in America are suffering depression in silence. And because basically he says that masculinity dictates that men cannot or should not be vocal about their emotions. And so he also brings up that as we increase in age, it may be harder for men to create bonds and friendships with other men and women. And not to say that I was extremely surprised to read this, but it was like something that it dawned on me. I would kind of like to go deeper and speak on this with the men in my community and find out, you know, so here we are. And then I wanted it to range for like different age groups, you know. And so, you know, we're millennials here, but, you know, we're also like coping with emotions and things like that. So I think that aspect kind of applied to everyone.
And kind of approaching middle age in all ways.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And so when I decided to do the show, Miguel had slid into my Facebook DMs. I have to say it.
Do we though?
Oh man, classic.
And I had reached out. I had said, you know, hey world Facebook friends, like, you know, I have this topic I want to talk about. Who are some of the guys that feel comfortable being on the show with me? And he had told me about a documentary called The Mask You Live In. And basically, Miguel, tell us a little bit what the documentary is about.
So it's a documentary that you should go check out like yesterday. It's on Netflix. And it's essentially going into how kind of flawed ideas of masculinity or what a man should be are basically endangering boys and stifling their expression and really taking a toll on their mental health and the repercussions of that throughout society, whether it's increased crime or mental illness or, you know, even more extreme cases of individuals, males, not being able to express themselves in a healthy manner.
And suicide.
Yeah.
And so basically the documentary follows boys and young men as they struggle to stay true to themselves while negotiating America's narrow definition of masculinity is what the tagline is. And basically the research that they were saying is boys compared to girls in the US are more likely to be diagnosed with a behavior disorder, prescribe stimulant medications, fail out of school, binge drink, commit a crime, and or take their own lives. And so it's a heavy topic. I know, you know, we're going to be shedding some light on this. And I did want to kind of do a disclaimer out there. This conversation, we're all talking about like our personal experiences, so there's no right or wrong. And a lot of these experiences are based on how we grew up and our elders. And so I just kind of want to like put it out there that this conversation is in no way to disrespect our elders or how we were brought up.
Right.
Because again, like as we get older, we learn, you know what I mean? And our parents learn, and I feel like I'm reaching that age where I've healed a lot with my relationship with my parent. And so you kind of realize like, hey, like our parents are just human beings trying to like figure it out. So just kind of wanted to put it out there because this is about growth. And so I guess we can start with, we can go around, but I really want to know how each of you were raised and when was the first time you were told to be a man. And Thad, we can actually start with you.
I was raised by a Jamaican father, a southern raised mother for the most part. And I would say, as far as me being raised, my grandmother played a huge role because my mother was so young. She had me when she was 16. So there's other people that played such a pivotal role in how I was raised, uncles, different things of that nature. And I remember getting my head stuck in bars, like the little burglar bars. And I remember I was so petrified and so afraid of like never getting out of these bars that obviously me being the age I was, 4 or 5, I'm gonna start crying. Like, this is like traumatic for me because I've already been told my ears are big and now my head is stuck between some bars, right? And grandma's getting butter and trying to slide me out. And so that was one of the first times where one of my younger uncles was telling me, like, in like not the exact words, but he was saying, stop being a pussy.
Yeah.
You get me? And like, man up. And I that's one of the most vivid memories I have as far as us going back, that I have of the first time where I was like, wait, like, what do you mean? Like this sucks. Shouldn't I be crying?
Right.
So,
yeah. And Miguel, how about you?
Well, I was raised by a single mother here in Miami, of Ecuadorian descent. But the work was also shared by my 2 older brothers, so they also kind of helped shape my definition of masculinity, and I can tell you that neither of us are into sports.
Okay.
And every partner we've ever had has ever been thankful for that.
For real.
Their wives love that.
And when was the first time they told you, or whoever told you to be a man?
I can't really recall that first time, but I do remember, like, when I was first faced with kind of like the inherent machismo and kind of homophobia of the Latino community. And it actually just dawned on me while I was in Ecuador a few weeks ago. I had this aunt who, was really overprotective of me. She would always be like, don't let Miguel go out alone because they'll take him and they'll rape him.
Damn.
And they'll turn him gay.
What?
As if that's something that could happen.
Right.
So when I kind of thought about that last month when I was in Ecuador, I was like, that's just ridiculous. I can't be turned gay by, this traumatic experience.
But we grew up listening to those things,
Right.
and we kind of feed into them. You're listening to Meet Them Mondays on Jolt Radio. I'm your host, Cristian Portilla. And Johnny, how about you? So when, how were you raised, and when was the first time, if that happened to you, that you heard that?
Yeah, it actually did. I'm born and raised in Queens, and Greek father, strong, hardworking guy, typical. You paint the picture, he'd be it. Mother was subservient, kind of Italian, but still strong-willed in her own way. And my father would be the type of guy that would come home after a long day. He was a taxi driver. Came over. He was an immigrant from Greece. And if I'd get hurt playing or whatever, come home, scraped glass in my arms from falling off a bike, whatever. If something hurt me, he would pull my hair off the other side or pull my ear and say, if you think that hurts, check this out. Like, in that way.
Yeah.
And anything, like, his way of kind of maintaining the family was with a strong fist, literally, he'd rush out to the front. You can hear the screen door closing. You can hear that hydraulics.
Yeah.
As soon as that hits, you have 30 seconds to find a place to hide. He's going to come back with a switch from the tree and literally whoop your ass. So it was kind of hard, very, very young. I know I've got a almost 13-year-old son. Definitely happened much younger than Zach is right now. Probably 7 or 8 years old, and you just get, fearful. And we were talking about this before we jumped on.
Yeah.
Fear instead of love.
Right.
And, you think your parents love you because they're supposed to. But really, you're afraid of letting them down and afraid of really feeling the wrong end of that backhand.
Yeah,
It was hard. And it really defined that narrow road of being a man, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And so, would you all say that if you had the males in your life, or if you had fathers in your life, were they positive role models, or did you have another male in your life that was a positive role model that kind of you remember thinking, okay, this is to me what a man is supposed to be, or in my head, since you were told that?
I think I had like too many negative stereotypes and too much sense to know that that was what to follow. So what I'm saying is, like, I had a lot of examples of what not to be, starting with my own father, who was, you know, not very faithful or reliable or whatever. And that's my Dominican side, by the way.
No shade to the Dominicans, because I love me some Dominicans.
No, you don't. So, I mean, as far as my brothers, I mean, they were a great example. And then in terms of the men that my mom tried to kind of place in the home as role models, it was just, you know, a lot of hits and misses, but mostly misses. But the mainstays were always my brothers, and even my oldest brother had to sometimes take that iron hand role and be the disciplinarian in the household. But now that he has kids of his own, he doesn't father them like that. He was just doing what he learned from his father.
Of course.
Facts.
And Daddy?
I think for me, the lines are kind of blurred because, in a sense, I've seen a lot of things that I would never do to my child or would never instill in my household. But then I've also seen things that now it's kind of weird because there's certain values that I think, even though the delivery may be the true issue, as in how we're delivering these messages, the value of what's trying to be instilled. You know, I recently had a conversation with my father where I told him, for so long I feel like you didn't love me because you were so gentle to my sisters, and for me it was like the opposite. It's always like, Antoine, Thaddeus, like, I'm gonna be a hard ass for you, and he told me, I do that so that you can be stronger than me. And it's such a weird
way of showing love.
It's such a weird dynamic, and it confuses us as we grow older, because I think about having my son or having my daughter, and I can't think of being an asshole in any way to them, right? Like, my perspective is like, no, I'm going to teach you how to be the most badass child on the planet. If you're a girl, you're going to be like Hit Girl from Kick-Ass. If you're a guy, you're going to be like Scott from Pilgrim. You're going to be like the coolest thing out, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's weird, but it's I will say some of those values and some of the things that I've gone through outside of my household, without some of those values, despite how they were delivered, I question whether or not I would have the strength to withstand certain things outside.
Yeah.
When you get into that real world and how that's all received.
You kind of thank them in a weird way.
You kind of say,
thank you for kicking my ass.
Maybe that ass kicking, despite it being wrong, and socially it's something that we should work on as a culture. Does it have its place when we reach a certain stage in our life, or when we have to defend ourselves, or
I find myself asking myself those things too.
Yeah.
You know,
I feel like at this point it's almost like, for millennials like us, probably like the last generation to take like whoopings, right? It's almost like a weird nostalgia that we really shouldn't have, but it's kind of like this trauma that we think has formed us into who we are, but really it's all the other things that our parents instilled in us that formed who we are, the good things, like things that showed us how to be kind and not afraid.
Yeah, I agree. And in some ways that was really hard to come by in my life. Full disclosure, I don't have a relationship with my parents right now, neither, or my sister. I've got a sister 4 years younger than me. Things didn't get any better, in my sense, right? Till about 10 years ago, when it got so bad that it was like a do or die. Am I going to save what I believe in and what I want to build? My son is a year old, but about a little over a year old, and you wonder, is this the legacy that I'm leaving him? Like, all this baggage and all this junk and crap that I'm bringing along is taking us down rather than building us up. The moment I did that, that's a hard decision to physically remove yourself from your parents, because they weren't going anywhere. They didn't know any better, you know. But in their case, they knew worse. You know, my father born in 1940 in Greece. That's a World War II. I mean, like that's a tough time to be around. I mean, he had siblings that never made it, you know, to see double
There's
digits.
a lot of generational traumas that we pay
sure.
for, you know, that
know?
I've come to realize. And you
It's
know,
true.
actually, you have a different perspective that I wanted to ask you
Mhm.
because you are a father, and we
Right.
were talking about this earlier. Like now that you have your son, how do you teach him, or what lessons do you want him to learn about being a man? And
Yeah.
how
That's
do you
a-
deal with that?
That's a great question. And the short answer is, you just go with it. I think that if you act from your heart, and all of us at Stable, I believe, do, for better or for worse, sometimes it's worse, but, you know, and it kind of gets us into hot water, you know, personally, or even, you know, out there in the world, but I don't believe that everything's going to be instant gratification either, right?
Right.
Sometimes I have a really hard day, or I've had hard days with Zach, with my son. Doesn't mean that they were bad. Some of those hard days were really good for our growth. Sticking to your guns and really doing what you believe in. I have never, I never spanked, quote unquote, spanked that kid once. We used to ask him what he thought spanking was when he was little, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pursed his lips. And he blew. I'm telling you,
That's
true story.
hilarious.
True story. He
That's
thought it
cool.
was like you know when you did to the little
Yeah.
the flowers. Yeah, and that was a beautiful thing. Like
Yeah.
for me, I feel like I kind of accomplished something, because I don't want to raise anyone that way, and I had a responsibility to raise a human, you know,
Yeah.
like and really bring them up. So I think that there's a certain amount of experience that you bring to the table that you just do naturally. And you know, he gets together with his friends now, and I look at him, and he's acting in a way sometimes better than I would to these guys. Wants to give away his most valued. He told me last night. Met a new friend over the weekend. Wants to give one of his bobbleheads that he keeps in a box. Worse than me. I mean, not worse than me. I used to buy two. I used to play with one, one to let you know. So exactly, you know. So I used to one to keep and one to sell or one to play with, but I used to keep it in the box. I have
he
a
said
couple
he
still.
wanted to give
He
his
wanted to
own.
give that one. You know, it's like a one of the guys from Overwatch. You know, like Reaper.
Okay,
Okay, Reaper. He wanted to give away.
Reaper's my
Okay.
favorite.
Okay, and was his favorite too, and he wanted to give it away. And I said to him, you know what? Last night I told him last thing. I believe in you. I've always believed in you. You have the biggest heart, and you've always been that kid. Checking if kids needed their erasers. Got in trouble for getting up to see if all the kids' pencils were sharpened for the test.
Oh my god.
Failed the test, by the way, but
Hey.
you know, but
Grown-
succeeded
grown
in
pains.
life. You know,
Exactly.
like that
Past the
kind of thing.
human
So,
test.
Exactly.
And how
I
do you
love that.
Exactly.
you
That's
gotta
fine.
put that
Okay.
down. You know, you gotta kind of honor that and celebrate it. And I told him, if that means you giving your whatever that's gonna be dust, you know, shortly after you, to somebody else, but as a token,
It makes you that happy.
go for
Go
it.
for it.
Go for it, because that's the kind of happiness that you're not gonna get from a thing.
Yeah.
I know, because I got a lot of things,
Yeah.
and those things do not bring me happiness. You know, although I'm pretty happy with some of my things that I
Yeah.
do collect.
Yeah.
You know, comic books being one of them. You know, I'm a big comic books guy. Being a little older than you guys, you know, seeing some things, you know, come full circle. I'm really happy that he's got his things, but I'm really happy that he's able to kind of give it away. So
He's on
experience,
the to-do list.
just experience. Yeah.
You're listening to Meet the Mondays on Jolt Radio. We are talking manhood, toxic masculinity, and basically with these times, and I wanted to kind of sort of bring this up, but you know, the Me Too movement, right?
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about this show, and the times that we're now, you know, that we're in now, women are standing up for themselves, for their rights more than ever, being very vocal. And I'm kind of curious to know what you all think, because now as a people, we're acknowledging rape culture, and we're acknowledging that we have, you know, generational traumas, like I said before, and that we maybe didn't know how to act or could have caused some harm to women or to other people. I'm kind of curious to know, as like, where you all stand. Have you, when these things started coming up as men, gone back into your life and thought about like rape culture, or if you had any moments where you felt like you put a woman in a vulnerable position, and kind of like how do you move in the world now, knowing these things and what you want to do going forward? And I guess
I think it's a matter of course, going into yourself and examining your conscience, examining your actions, and, you know, really taking that moral stock. But then after that, once you've, you know, checked all the boxes and realize you're good and you don't have any amends to make, I think it's a matter of educating the other males around you. So, for example, you know, I have a lot of homeboys that still refer to women as bitches, just as like a regular default placeholder term.
Right.
It costs you nothing to try to just tell them, yo, you don't know another word. There's obviously so many other words to refer to women. So it and you put yourself in a position there, and this is part of an exercise I do with my students in the circles. I have them, you know, give me every conceivable name for a woman, ranging from horrible to neutral to marvelous, right? So we try to eliminate those negative ones, right? Well, what it really comes down to is you might lose some homeboys if you're gonna correct somebody. You might be considered a pussy or less than a man if you're gonna check another man.
Right, and that's your cost. You said there was no cost, but that's your cost.
But it's not a big one to pay.
Exactly.
Because you're getting rid
able
of.
to weigh it out.
Yeah, you're getting rid of like somebody pretty narrow-minded and archaic
It's
in your
toxicity.
circle.
You're right.
Yeah.
And Daddy?
I think it's a weird time. I was actually having this conversation the other day, and the Me Too culture. I mean, I'm a huge feminist. I love every single aspect of a woman and their culture and their way of being and all that. And it's weird because I was saying, if me and my girl were to break up tomorrow, I would be terrified of going back into the world as a single man at this point in time, because I feel like there's this weird undefined line between gender role and acknowledgement of femininity. And I feel like the women are at an all-time high as far as uniting and power and all that, and that's excellent. But I also feel like there's this confusion of like women still wanting men to be men,
Yeah.
but not wanting men to be men
Right.
at the same time.
Yes.
And there's no way for us to define the great line.
Right.
Like, I imagine myself in a club and being like, man, I really want to like grab her butt right now. Like, just like, I mean, let's just keep it 100. I really want to grab that ass.
To your girl.
I really want to kiss this girl that we've been, well, yeah, to like,
Yeah.
to my,
You know, just gotta put it out there.
Yeah.
And like, let's say in this long process of courting, and Miguel probably can attest because my boy used to get it in.
To this
All right.
scenario.
You're afraid of if someone saw you doing now what they would think?
No, it's just, what is she thinking? Is she thinking that if I don't act a certain way, if I don't carry myself a certain way, there's this like sense of what is adequate for women nowadays? And there's so many different types of women, and I mean, if you want to even go back to like the rape thing, rape is fetish. It's a fetish now for certain women. You get me?
Yeah.
So when you have all these different sects of psyche and like how men are supposed to approach women, and women love to do this thing. I love you all. I'm just speaking, you know.
No, speaking.
They love to do this thing where they were like
the yes no game.
Yes, like you would get home from a night out, you know, at Kitchen 305, you living your life, you vibing, right? And then you get a text like, "You're such a pussy. Like, why didn't you make a move?" And in my head, I'm like,
"Cause I was
trying to respect you." You get me?
Yeah.
So I think it's so complicated now.
Yeah, but you know what? That happens because as women, and I'm just speaking for some, not all, but we also have like these pressures, right? Because
100%.
I'm not gonna lie to you,
100%.
I'm sure that there's been many times where as a woman you just want to fuck, you just want to meet someone, you just want a guy to grab your ass, or a girl, or you just want to take it there, you want those things. But the women now that are very vocal in their expression of sexuality, like now we're not talking, bless them all, because they're the brave ones, and now we're not saying, oh, these girls are whores or these girls are sluts. 100%. But back in the day, if a woman was assertive, like, I do want you to grab my ass, or I do want you to do these things, es una puta. You get me?
100%.
And not only that, but then we're told that by our parents and by our grandmas, and like, you know, you have a flower and like your flower should not be tarnished, and we have all these metaphors and ideas, and so all of those things are also things that we as women deal with.
100%.
You know what I'm saying?
And that ties into that gender role thing
Right.
that I was speaking on, because we're entering a weird place where like we're the last of the Mohegans as far as that culture where like these gender roles played a prominent role in our life, and here we are trying to change the masculine makeup of our guys and say, look, you can be, you don't have to be that like macho guy.
Right.
So, but it's weird because it's like we're in the middle of that transition.
Because we had to be.
Because we had to be.
Yeah, Johnny, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, and there are some points that I mean, I agree with everything you said from all of you. But going back to the movement, there's this image in my head of a tidal wave when I think about these things, right? Because it's such an institutionalized norm that we're dealing with, and it could be anything, right? But whenever there's something that is such a system already put in place, race, right?
Oh,
It could be anything.
the
Gender.
story in the book.
It really is, right? So it takes a tidal wave, I feel, to kind of at least step up to the plate.
Mm-hmm.
So to hear it's the most painful thing.
Right.
To hear of all this coming in, and then to the other side, oh, you hear things like witch hunt. Oh, you hear things that are just coming after me. You know what? If you're your true, authentic self, let them come. Let them come.
You have
And if there's
nothing
something
to
to
hide.
find, then own it.
Period.
Own
Period.
your mistakes. And that's another thing too. Going back to raising someone, right? And I think owning also, even being a leader, you know, managing a staff of a dozen or so, day to day, 7 days a week. 24/7, 25/7.
Better work.
I think you for sure you have to be able to own everything that you put out there.
Right.
You know, and if it's authentic, then it's who you are, and you're not for everyone.
Right.
You're not for everyone.
Period.
But
and that's
you
the
can,
hardest rule to learn in
yes,
life.
it's
is that
true. You're not for
You're
everyone.
not for
I
everyone.
feel your whole points about being out there and putting yourself out there, but you know what? I'm not going to put myself out there. I'm going to be myself, and I'd rather be with someone rather than anyone. You know, and to be able to say that to my son, and to be able to say, look what I did, or you know, that whole tidal wave thing. Like, we all got to get together, and those who are not part of the movement are still part of it because of the support system.
Right.
You know, and I
Yeah.
think that we can bring our ideals and say, you know what, we know what it's like to be literally browbeaten or just straight up beaten, and we can help. And what do I do in a day, you know, to kind of like guide people, whether it's over the counter,
Right.
you know, or it's, you know, one-on-one relationships, like
Yeah.
knowing people.
How do you carry yourself?
How do you
as a
carry
human
yourself
being in
as a
this
human
world?
being, you
Yeah.
know? And it's that whole thing, right? Like, I like holding a door.
Yeah.
I like holding a door.
I love a door being held for
You
me.
know what I mean?
I
But
kind
it
of
does
don't.
not.
I do. I love that.
I don't mind, and I don't mind being
Let's walk faster.
Yeah, no, but I mean, we're working together. Don't forget too. Like
Yeah.
it's a little bit like, you know, chivalry or kind of
Yeah.
thing. No, it's almost a respect thing, and I think
Absolutely.
it's a human respect, right?
Yeah.
So I think that as long as you put yourself out there authentically,
Yeah.
you know, let them come.
You're listening to Meet the Mondays on Jolt Radio, and we're just talking about manhood and all these different topics. But you know what? I kind of wanted to bring it back to us in the room right now, right? And so one of the things that I wanted to touch on was male friendships. And what are your personal experiences with these male friendships? I mean, I know, and I'm sure you guys have always heard that line, bros before hoes. And it, like, I remember when I would hear these things and talk about it within, like, the girl circles, I'd be like, damn, like, guys are really sticking together, like, bros before hoes, like, why can't we do that? Like, why are we always, like, kind of against each other? And now I'm feeling more of a sisterhood within women, with different women, but nonetheless, like, it's always seemed like the guys always have each other's back. And kind of like, I want to know if now that we're, like, time has passed and we're not in high school and we've overcome, like, these different journeys and, you know, becoming adults, do you really think that there is such a thing as bros before hoes? Do you feel that brotherhood? And what have your personal experiences been like? And Thaddy, you can take that one first.
Well, first off, chicks before dicks.
Right on.
No.
I I mean, chicks before dicks, that's right.
Yeah, hey. Oh, yeah, and that's so funny because that kind of ties into my mentality. I remember when I was young, that was kind of the thing, but I think it's less because of bros before hoes and just more because women scare the shit out of you when you're young. So you're kind of like, I don't really want a girlfriend at 12. We're watching Beetleborgs and playing Pokemon. Like, we're not worried, we're not as worried about it as we would be until puberty comes.
Right.
But I've been a guy that has, oddly enough, had mostly female friends. So I never really had to do the bros before hoes thing. I understand the mentality because, when like a girl breaks your heart, you go to your homies and you're like, yo, let's go like play, throw a tackle or something, and then you just express yourself as like a group of men, going against the grain and the hardships of being a young guy dealing with, women. But for me, it was never as prominent as it is for some guys, and a lot of my friends live and die by that mentality. And I think that also goes back to when I was younger, and uncles and grandpas and different male figures said, Antoine, don't get a girlfriend until later in life. And that was the mentality. And the mentality was, you fuck everything that moves that you get a chance to. You get me?
Yeah.
And I think that's where that mentality comes from. It's like a girl is whatever until it's time to get married.
Yeah.
You get me? They're going to come, they're going to go, they're going to break your heart, they're going to crap on you. And so because of this,
don't take them seriously.
Don't take them seriously. Yeah. And I think that's where it starts for the bro before hoe movement.
Do you feel like how you were saying that you would express yourself with your friends? At that age, did you feel like you could express yourself with your friends, or was there like a limit to how you could express yourself with your friends?
Oddly enough, I think in like the adolescence and like that pre-puberty stage, I think expression is at an all-time high.
Okay.
Because there's no real blueprint for how you guys are supposed to act. There's no like, it's just the kids in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
You get me? We haven't figured out who we are. We're not trying to be goths or preps or all these different, splits of people like it is when you get in high school, and it's like, who am I? What group do I stick to? Who am I? So I think when you're that young, it's you're all just kids trying to be kids and trying to like not get disciplined by your parents.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a lot more open scale at that point in time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as far as the whole bros before hoes mentality, it is really juvenile. Because if I were still operating that way, I wouldn't have any married friends. Because the threat is that, if my bro gets a hoe, then I have less time with said bro. Right?
Yeah.
And less attention from said bro. But I have bros that have wives and kids, and I still get to see them and enjoy all their company.
I like how you made that switch over.
Yeah.
It's good. It's a keeper.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I wouldn't have any of the lasting friendships, some of which I've had since I was 6 years old.
Wow, until now?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I have 3 best friends. Bobby's one of them.
Okay.
We've been friends since 5th grade.
Wow.
And I'm friends with the first person I made friends with when I moved down here from New York when I was a little kid. And I have a lot of lasting friendships. And I think it's a matter of finding tribes. So, for example, when I was in college, I joined a Latino fraternity. I'm still very close with my tribe. I still visit them in New York. They visit me here. So that's one family that I chose to form for myself, a society of camaraderie and brotherhood. And there are other ones that I've formed elsewhere, but as far as like the everlasting friendships, those have taken on a lot of different forms. For example, one of my closest best friends, also named Miguel. I'm his best man in his wedding this year. So he became a born again Christian. So a lot of the stuff that him and I used to bond over, which was, as he would put it, of the world, we stopped doing together. So I had to step back and be like, well, no, I mean, our friendship is way deeper than all those things that we would go out and do, all those crazy times. No, because this guy knows like what I'm most afraid of, and he knows like how I feel about my
He knows
father.
you on deeper levels.
Exactly,
yeah.
and that's what's at the core of these lasting friendships. Like
That's true.
you know, with a lot of your friends, you'll have like some crazy stories about like, you know, a time that you went, or what's your favorite song, or what's your jam. But can you tell me like what my biggest regret is, bro?
No.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, like
Yeah.
those are the ride or dies that they know you.
100%.
Yeah.
You know, Johnny, I wanted to kind of like, because you know, we're referring back to the article. I remember when we were talking about it, and it was talking about men as they get into like middle age and later on in life. It's harder for them to keep these friendships and to cultivate them, right? And so a lot of men suffer in silence. And I'm kind of curious to know if you relate to that, and in this stage of your life that you're in, and fatherhood, and also being an entrepreneur, and just being a human being with all these responsibilities. Do you feel like it's hard to keep these friendships now at your age and with all the other roles that you have, or has it been different for you? Like,
Well,
do you
that's
think?
a great question, and very layered. Sorry,
No, it's okay.
I think that part of it is, well, I remember that article, and I remember hearing the podcast, and I remember that guy came home and hugged the pole. There was a pole in his house,
Yeah,
and he felt so alone
right.
that he would just reach out and hug this pole just because he had nobody, you know.
Yeah,
And you get that feeling sometimes, you know, as connected as we are. I'm from the generation. I realize as we're having this conversation, I do have a few years on you guys, collectively, even. But we didn't have internet. We didn't have connectivity. We didn't have. I mean, and we're even learning right now how to be so connected and switching between apps to talk to different friends.
right.
But that idea also appears in life, right? There are different ways you can approach and relate to your friends. And I'm not talking Snapchat, you know, iMessage versus Facebook or Instagram or straight up phone calls. But there are different ways you talk to different friends. It does resonate with me a lot. I do have a lot of acquaintances, a lot of friends, a lot of people that I do know and that do know me. But the few are far between. And those are the ones that really know your deepest, darkest, and those are the fewest. I think it's going to be the same way in every generation. I think it's going to be really hard. You know, I think what makes it stranger right now is that you got so many ways to keep up with people.
Right.
Why can't you keep these friends? It's the
Right.
same thing as it's always been. You know, I could probably name a few instances, and maybe we can talk offline, or whatever, about these things that even my father dealt with. You know, and I've heard him with his friends. Or, you know, you can see your older siblings. I have a younger sister, but you know your cousins, and how I haven't seen you for years, you know. How many times have you heard that, you know?
Yeah.
In whatever language. I feel the same way a lot of times, you know.
Yeah.
But I haven't. I've seen you a few minutes ago. I saw you on Facebook active 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
But it's the same kind of feeling. Even though you're active on Facebook doesn't mean you're so super active in my life.
Right.
So you've got to be able to, I guess, realize that and recognize it. And you know what? Be comfortable with the few that you do have.
Right.
It's really tough. I related a lot to that article and that podcast in a lot of ways, because as I mentioned, I do have a few years on you guys, and I'm probably the one closest to approaching middle age. But I mean, how many 88-year-olds do you know, right? So I'd be pretty much middle age right now. And you think about it sometimes, and I think about it in a good way.
Yeah.
I really love my closest people, you know. And I love meeting new people all the time.
I know.
You know,
I love that about you.
Yeah, you know it.
You're listening to Meet the Mondays on Joe Radio. I'm your host, Cristian Portilla. And, you know, it's funny because when I was actually talking to my mom this morning. We try to talk in the mornings, and I was telling her about the show and how I was going to have this show. And we were talking, and because I've been doing the research and I've been reading and just kind of reflecting on the relationships that I've had in my past with different men in my life, whether they were absent or not, or with elders or with all these things. And excuse me, I remember telling my mom, you know, reflecting, I feel like I was also wrong in the way that I treated some of the men in my life, past partners. And I think that I also encouraged that toxic masculinity. And I remember telling her, yeah, like, you know, thinking, because there was times where with past partners, I would say things like when we would get in an argument or whatever was going on, like, I'm ashamed to say this, but I recognize my growth.
Sure.
I would say things like, oh, you're gonna start crying? Like, really, you're about to start crying? Or I would say things like, you know, it was the lack of maturity, the lack of spiritual growth, the lack of, you know, so many things. And my mom actually would tell me, you know, it's funny because now that I'm hearing you say that, I remember also to past partners saying things like, we have this saying, like, lágrimas de cocodrilo, or like crocodile tears. Oh, this guy is only crying or acting this way because he's trying to convince me of something, because he's trying to just put on a front, so I won't, you know, leave, or so I won't be this way, you know. And we take that, like, that fragility of, like, men and how they acted with us, and, like, kind of taunted them, or think, like, they're not being serious because they just want something from us.
Because the vulnerability it's not supposed to happen, so it doesn't seem genuine.
Exactly.
Especially for Latino men.
For Latino, but you know what I'm noticing? For Latino men like you, Miguel, in our black communities like you, Thaddy, and even Greek, like, wow, like, we're also connected in these behaviors, no matter how different our cultures, and no matter, like, like, no matter the age groups. And so that kind of brings me to, like, what I wanted to talk about next, vulnerability and masculinity. And do they mix? And have you had times where the women in your life had made you feel like you could not be vulnerable or emotional about them, or emotional around them, you know? And
I mean, I still have trouble being vulnerable around my girl, and we've been together almost a decade now, seven years. So it's something that we did in the shadows. You get me? Like, I've only had one male friend that has seen me genuinely sit in a car and listen to a washed out album and cry. You get me? And, like, really talk about, like, the things that are bothering me. And I'm going through a transition now. I just turned 31. So I'm reaching this stage where I'm going through this stage where I don't know who my friends are. Like, I have buddies, I have friends, and there's a disconnect. You get me? Because some of the things that we used to do and that we used to find brotherhood in I don't really enjoy. Like, I had a Super Smash tournament the other week, and it was the most fun I had in, like, the last 6 months, but I've spent that same amount of time going out and drinking with friends and having lifeless conversation, because it's guys, we can't talk about certain shit. Like, it's just have a good time, forget about your problems, and just fucking truck on, because we're men.
Right.
And that's the exact mentality that we don't need to have, you know?
Right.
So we grow up with this group of empty men who really don't have a place to express themselves and be vulnerable.
Miguel, what can you say about that, especially as a Latino?
I'm very fortunate to have a core group of friends that know exactly how soft their friend is. So they know
R&B ass Miguel.
Yeah, they know that if I'm having some kind of issue, I'm gonna come to them, and I'm gonna come to them with tears in my eyes, snot in my nose, and, you know, troubles on my mind. But they know that they could do the same for me.
Right.
You know, that they could turn to me when they find themselves in similar situations, male or female.
But how do you, like, was it always like that, or do you get that with time through trust?
I don't know.
Or, like,
I mean, I've been told that as a child I was a crybaby. So, I mean, I guess I've always been very sensitive.
Right.
You know, and I think that's only now, like, I'm starting to really embrace that. And it's attracting a whole different kind of person. It's attracting a lot of
in the people that you around you?
Yeah. Okay. And the people that just I interact with. I'm getting a lot of very smart, very kind people in my circle because I'm opening myself up and being vulnerable. Right. Vulnerable to those influences, because I know that I'm kind, I know that I'm good, and I know that I'm, you know, I can be soft and share that, because I know in that softness there's probably something for someone else. When I'm in the schools with the students, you know, we tell them, you know, you dictate how much you want to share, but just realize that if you share something that's really hard for you to share, you might be helping somebody else by sharing it. So really examine
Right.
your involvement in this process.
That's amazing. And I do, going back to the vulnerability and masculinity thing, I mean, I've redefined that for myself over the years by influence of music, movies, and friends, like just what I feel is my core. And it's all of it, right? And I think that they go hand in hand. And it's kind of like what you were just saying, Miguel. I mean, you wind up finding the person or the people around you that attracts to that. And then little by little you start to form a circle, and sometimes it's a new circle, and sometimes it hurts to leave those others behind,
Yeah.
or to just have them, around or whatever. Just literally
Yeah,
around.
you know, like where you stand with
You
them.
know where you stand, and it's all good. And I hope
Yeah.
that some are listening right now, because it's all love,
Right.
and everybody knows that I do love them. There's a place in my heart for them that's like very universal. But as you grow, you realize there are certain things that you need to redefine. Like I respect and appreciate my vulnerability, and I put that in the hands of somebody.
Right.
And it is a big deal,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's a heart on your sleeve kind of thing, and it hurts, because anyone could just walk by and knock that shit right off.
Yeah.
Right.
And it kills
Exactly.
you, and you just want to go back and forth over text, or you just want to go yell at somebody. It doesn't do any good to yell. Just have at it. Like, that's cool, because I decided to put myself out there,
Right.
and this is what it is.
Yeah.
And that is in effect my definition of masculinity in a way, because then you are faced with so much struggle and so much pain on top of everything else, on top of your place in the world and the race and the gender, and the place in the house, as a father, as a leader in the store, or as your friend, as a lover, as anyone, you start, they pile up, shit
Yeah.
piles up, and you have to make sure you maintain that, because that is masculinity, or that is femininity. And I do believe in a balance, by the way.
Yeah.
That is a big thing that people do forget.
Well, we can go that deep if you want to. Please.
Yeah,
You know what? I was just
You
gonna
gotta
say,
get another shower?
can you all believe that we have 10 minutes left of this show?
Wow.
Incredible.
Yeah,
Happened fast.
so
Yeah.
it
You
happened
start
really
crying.
fast.
Yeah.
Oh
Cry,
my
baby.
God, don't be sad.
R&B Miguel.
We have 10 minutes left of the show, but I do want you guys to touch on that, and then let's get into that briefly about the balance of the masculine and the feminine, and I'll put
Well,
that
I think I got an advantage in being raised by a woman who handled both the typically male and female duties of a household, which in turn kind of formed how I went about in my partnerships when I was with a partner, especially like a live-in girlfriend. So, I've had a few live-in girlfriends who were not really into like domestic chores and things like that, but I grew up doing them for myself because
Right.
my mom showed me how to do them, as opposed to the men of my father's generation who can't dress themselves without a woman.
Yes, I know
That's
one
why-
of those. in my
that's why
life.
buttons are
Yeah,
put
I'm sure
away,
there's a
right?
few more. I'm sure
I
there's a
know
few,
some of
yeah.
those.
in your lives if you've
That is so
if
true.
you've seen it. So it's like,
Yeah.
I owe my mom an eternal debt for just like equipping me to be a self-sufficient man. I could get all of this done without a woman's help, and it's
Like, I love me enough for the both of us type of thing.
right, and then I can do it for whoever my partner is, and do it. It is impressive.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's also like out of love and out of trying to keep a home and make a home together, where roles aren't exactly defined, where it's just more of a partnership.
Yeah.
And that goes back to that kind of feminine, masculine
Masculine
balance,
balance.
because some might say that being very emotional and quick to emotion is a feminine trait.
Not really.
I'm not really convinced, because
It's a human trait.
identify as a
Because you
man.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The human
True.
experience.
But it's also
absolutely.
about emotional intelligence.
Yes.
Like, I think I have enough to know exactly how I feel the moment that I feel it.
Right.
Very true.
And
You
I can
know-
articulate it, which goes an extra step.
Yeah.
But the second I articulate it, I become vulnerable.
Right. Because of the outside.
Yeah.
And that had nothing to do with you.
Mhm.
Right.
In my eyes, you did the right thing, or
Yeah.
well, you did the thing I would have done, which I think intelligently, emotionally intelligently.
Yeah.
I think that's where we need to be, and that's where it's at.
I guess we will be wrapping it up soon, but I kind of want to finish off with asking you all, what type of men do you think you are? What type of men, or how would you define yourself as a man? And what is the legacy that you want to leave for those to come after you?
Can we do that after the break?
Or no, the break.
I know there's
There
no
was
break.
no
There's
break.
no
This
break.
is this I think is the first show I ever do without a song, because I was like, no, we can't take a break. This is really good, and I'm not sacrificing this content for a song.
Good call.
Nice.
Thank you. I made that executive decision.
Very good. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it, guys.
I want to leave a legacy of men that are not afraid to express themselves. I think we all feel the emotions. I think us as men, we all feel the exact things that we've discussed here. I think the issue is, how do we get generations to feel comfortable expressing it? And I just want to leave, and not only men, like women,
Yep.
you know, I want us all to be able to express ourselves equally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, sexually, because I also believe religion plays a part in some of that mind state as well. I just want people to feel like they can walk down the street in this world that is sometimes shitty and still feel amazing about being who the fuck they are.
Yeah.
And that'll make the ride so much
Yeah.
easier.
I love that, and you're doing that now, boo. You're doing that here.
Squad.
And it is about balance, you know, and authenticity, but about being bold and great, right, and unafraid, you know. And I don't think those are separate words. I almost feel like we should say that on one long stream.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I want to not only just leave for my son, and for others, you know, because he has somebody come over, they see that in the house. You hang out with me a few minutes, you hang out with me a few minutes, you can feel that.
Yeah.
You know, it's difficult, and I don't think that those should be separated, because that's how it should be. It should be difficult. You know, it should be all one, and it is love and not fear. And we talked about this right before we came on. And
Is
it
that
is
your
love
legacy?
and not fear, and that's what I want to leave behind. You know, and I don't think that you should be afraid or leave anyone behind either.
Yeah.
You know, if you see someone struggling too, and that's bold.
Yeah.
And I think my son's got that even more. So I think I'm already on the right path.
Oh,
But
congrats.
as much as I've got left in this world, you know, I want to be sweet and kind and thoughtful, you know, and true and authentic and be there, you know, for someone, but for also people too. You know, I got people, you know, depending on me, and I want to make sure that I'm, but also there for myself too. But yeah, that would be it. That'd be it.
Okay.
I would consider myself very open, kind, and just welcoming person. But as for how I'd want that translate to, you know, younger men that I interact with, whether they're my nephews or my students or just some young cat I'm talking to, is not to be afraid to be kind, because we are so often afraid to do that because of, you know, the positions they leave us in, of vulnerability, of being taken advantage of and whatnot. Well, as long as whatever happens as a result of your kindness doesn't kill you, then you can keep on being kind.
Yeah, that's great.
You might get burned, but you'll learn. You'll definitely learn and come back from it. And the true test is to forgive and continue to be kind, because that starts with the self. So I guess what I want to leave is forgiveness, you know, because as men, especially us who are kind of the last holdouts from all of that faulty information, we have to forgive those men that programmed us that way in order for us to begin the new era, the new mode of being. So yeah, forgiveness for self and for everyone else moving forward.
That's awesome.
Amazing.
And you know, I'm so grateful for all of you coming on here and having this
Thank
conversation
you.
with me and for our listeners. And if like people out there wanted to befriend you, because now I'm sure everybody's like, oh, I want to get to know these guys.
I got nothing else. That's really it.
Yeah,
Would you
It's all scripted.
would you all be open to maybe connecting with some of these people online? Like, do you want to maybe say your handles or how
Yeah,
you
man,
can
of
be
course.
reached at? I know all of you have an artistic side to you, and there's so many facets to your beautiful selves. So maybe Johnny, how can people find you and Cream and your handles? And
It's hard to spell, easy to find. Johnny Tsokos, it's Tsokos. First name Johnny. Facebook, Instagram, whatever. And more than happy to connect with anybody. Love to stay connected with these guys once we leave.
Yes.
And I got much love for you, so you're welcome anytime. And I'm also, if you guys are on foot, I am at Cream Parlor, so you can find me there.
And if you haven't been to Cream,
Purple Rain. That's all I'm gonna
someone
say.
has been.
Purple Rain, and he dropped some.
Purple Rain, unicorn poop, do it.
And Thaddy, how about you and your creativity and yourself?
You guys can find me on Instagram primarily. That's where I'm the most active. God Loves Gucci, exactly how it sounds together. That's my DJ handle. And if you guys want to have more meaningful convos, hit me up there.
For sure. And Miguel?
Miguel Pichardo on Facebook is my only social media. But if you Google my name, you can find a lot of the poetry and prose that I've published. Just disregard all of those articles about criminals in the DR. They just have my name. They're not
you. Not you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, world, for listening to Meet Them Mondays on Jolt Radio. Make sure to tune back in on May 7th, Monday, May 7th at 7 p.m. for new episodes of Meet Them Mondays. And to listen to tonight's show and other episodes, head to roamfreerights.com. Find me on the web at Roam Free Rights. This is Cristian Portilla signing off. Thank you all.
Much love. Thank you very much.
We don't take losses, we just learn.
Okay.
That's it.
I love that. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to the live Facebook. We did things a little differently and didn't take a song break, but that wasn't bad because
that was amazing. We did.
And so, you'll find the show posted on my site after. This is Johnny. That's Thad. This is Miguel. I'm your host, Cristian Portilla. Thank you so much for the support. See ya.
Peace.
Bye.